Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. And today we've got the awesome Tom with us. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hi Saskia, I'm very good.
Thank you
Hope
so
you're good.
Thank you so much for coming along today, for sharing your expertise, your time, and some of your story with us as well. It's very much appreciated. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm quite near Oxford. I'm in Bicester,
Right.
not too far from Oxford and not
Yeah.
too far from London. I'm a screenwriter, film producer, journalist, and occasionally composer as well.
Awesome. So, do you want to tell us a little bit more about some of those roles and what they involve?
Yeah, so I kind of got into filmmaking as a screenwriter about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I'd been kind of plugging away doing it as a hobby for a few years before that.
Yes.
Then I managed to get a break doing a kind of low budget horror film.
Oh, cool.
That tends to be the way in for a lot of indie filmmakers.
Right.
Um, and then from there, I just kept getting kind of gig after gig.
Congratulations.
Uh,
Well
so
done.
yeah, it's always good. And then last year, I kind of moved into producing my own films as well to
Awesome.
take a bit more control over what I was doing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've got a film coming out in February called The Baby in the Basket. So that's
Okay.
a kind of like gothic horror film.
Sounds lovely.
Um,
Dan.
yeah, and yeah, I've just produced one uh, called We Go Again, which was kind of a bit. This one I kind of produced solo. The one before that, The Baby in the Basket, I co-produced with a couple of people I knew.
Yeah.
So I kind of jumped in and did one solo as well.
Good on
And then
you.
yeah, produced it, wrote it, basically did everything and then composed the score as well.
Wow. So what's the score for people that don't understand what scoring is?
Oh, okay. So yeah, basically the music in the film.
Yeah.
So if I want to build up tension, it'll be some tense music or uplifting music or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
yeah, I did all the music in the film.
Well done. That takes a lot of talent to do all those different things. So you're multi-talented. And how long has that taken you to get into that role that you've been doing?
Uh, well, it's weird because music was probably my first love, really.
Yeah.
Um, when I was younger, I kind of got into playing the guitar because that's what every sort of kid my age, particularly back because I grew up in the sort of the early 90s.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and every kid wanted a guitar
Yeah. I
strapped
remember.
over their shoulder, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I started learning that. Actually, my old guitar teacher was Fraser T. Smith, who people might know as one of Britain's kind of super producers, working with Adele and Craig
Awesome.
David, people like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, he before he became a super producer, he was going house to house teaching people how to play guitar.
Right.
Um, then he got too famous and had to quit. So yeah, he left me to it.
Well, bless it.
Um, yeah, but then I was never sort of hugely interested in being a performer. I love music, I love making it
Yeah.
and sort of playing, but I was never kind of the sort of person who wanted to be front and center on a stage
Get you.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Well,
performed a
nice.
couple of times
Yeah. Yeah.
with my cousin way back in the day. And then
Right.
he went on to be in a sort of half famous rock band.
Oh, cool. So you know loads of
Um,
famous people there. Seem to have
yeah,
that.
a few people here and there, yeah.
Yeah.
But I come from quite a musical family, so
Yeah.
my all my uncles played music. They'd been in a couple of bands. One of my uncles was in a quite a famous German electronic band called Tangerine Dream.
All right.
Um, and they were quite famous. They did a few movie scores as well. So they did the music on a few
The singer.
films of like
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I then transitioned from that into becoming a writer. I sort of grew an interest in that.
Yeah.
And it's so, technically it's a lot easier than because you can just sort of pick up a keyboard and start writing. And yeah, so that was kind of like my journey from doing music into writing.
Awesome. That's quite a big change. So did you have an education or is that just something you decided to get into? Like, say, for example, someone wants to do what you're doing right now. Would you advise them just
Yeah.
as a passion, or would you say go and get an education around that and get into it that way?
You could do, yeah. I mean, in terms of music, I think getting the educational side of that in terms of music production
Yeah,
and everything that goes with that would probably be quite useful. That was something I did consider at one point when I was very young. So I was about 17 and I was going to start a music course.
right.
I ended up, because it was so far away from where I lived, I ended up uh, basically dropping out and then going to work because I just felt like I needed money.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Um,
I know what you mean.
yeah. And then, yeah, a few years later, I went back to college, um, started doing more, I guess, the kind of staple subjects like English and business.
Yeah,
And when I was doing English, that's where I kind of discovered, well, actually, I'm quite good at writing
right.
creatively,
Yeah,
and I quite like it. So I kind of gained a passion for that through going to learn.
that's
And then
awesome.
I studied film studies at university. So
Right.
yeah, I kind of did study a little
Yeah,
bit.
you got some background knowledge there. So that's really
Yeah,
interesting. And also being in Oxford, I'm from Oxford originally, that's where I was born. So I know Oxford's not
yeah.
quite in London, but it's outside of London. How do you find that with your career and obviously getting placements and meeting other people? Do you find that quite easy to do, being outside of London, or do you find that a bit of a struggle as well?
I think because I'm on, as you know, Oxford's probably it's quite well connected with London anyway. So you can kind of get into Marylebone or Paddington, maybe a couple of other places. So I've never really had that issue. If I need to go and have a meeting in London,
Yeah.
just hop on the train. I'm there within, maybe just over an hour now.
Yeah,
I used to live in High Wycombe as well, so
yeah, I
I was
know.
even closer back then.
Yeah, halfway, I'd say from Oxford to London, High Wycombe would
Yeah,
be. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Oh, so that's super cool. And what kind of challenges and barriers have you faced getting into film and obviously doing music and then switching over to film? What kind of issues and barriers did you find?
I think in terms of it's probably similar with both with film and music that
Yeah,
it's where do you find your way in? It's quite difficult. Unless you kind of know someone or you've got an in somewhere
yeah,
or you get that bit of luck. I mean, there's probably been at the moment, there's never been a wider range of places to, put your music or put your film in terms of streamers, channels like Spotify or, you
yeah,
know, Amazon, everything else like that.
yeah,
So the places you can find to put your stuff, you've never had more opportunities, but finding those breaks where you get a bit of support or you get marketed, that's really tough. I mean,
yeah,
it's always been difficult, but it's sort of tougher than ever now.
yeah.
Um,
Competitive, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, very competitive.
Yeah. And I think with the music industry as well, like we've got all these social media platforms, but we don't actually see an income coming back to the artists. Do you find the same thing with film, or is that a little bit better than the music industry in that aspect of getting paid?
It is very much the same. I mean, I think it was Lily Allen saying the other week that she's got 1,000 subscribers on OnlyFans just for pictures of her feet, and she
Yeah,
gets more from that than 7 million streams a month
that's
on
right.
Spotify.
Yeah,
So film is very much the same,
right.
and it increasingly what I'm finding that the market is slowing down in film in terms of people investing in it,
Yeah,
opportunities to kind of get financed in films. A lot of budgets are dropping, so there's always I think when you see all the very high up people like you could see
yeah,
Taylor Swift or in
yeah,
terms of film you see all the Marvel things, they create a sense of an illusion that there's lots of money going around, but it's all being siphoned into the bigger artists or the bigger
right.
films.
Yeah,
Um, and the indie market has struggled recently because, yeah,
it's a shame.
it's been kind of on the downslope since COVID. And then there was strikes recently in the film world with like screen actors.
Yeah.
Um, and things haven't really picked up since then.
And the cost of living,
So
wow. Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt,
that as well. Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah,
Yeah. Because ultimately a lot of sort of working class artists particularly they might not have the benefits that someone has who maybe
More well
they can
established.
live rent free in a a garage somewhere,
Yeah.
or an annex in their parents' place,
Yeah.
and kind of fully focus on that. Um, but yeah, it's difficult. The streaming model is kind of where everything gets filtered to, and it's a model that doesn't necessarily work.
Yes.
Fractions of a penny per stream or per
Yeah.
view of your film. You need other incomes. In terms of like music, people get their other incomes via gigging and things like that, but that's increasingly difficult too,
Yes.
because even if you start on the low end and you do pub gigs and you do this, that, and the other, even pubs are struggling. So
Right. Yeah.
there's less of those ground floor gigs going around as well.
Yeah, we're
Even
seeing a lot of closures, aren't we, as well, with the venues at the moment? So that's another
yeah,
impact of the grassroots venues and people coming up that ladder, which is such a challenge.
it
Yeah,
is. Yeah, it's tough. So at some point, the big companies like Spotify and Amazon and everything else like that, and the ones relating to film, they kind of need to find a way to get more money filtering back to the artists. Because
yes,
again, when you get into it, from my point of view as a filmmaker, and I'm sure it's the same with musicians, that there's agents, there's managers, and everyone else is kind of in the middle of that chain. It's
yeah.
always the artist that's the last one for everything to filter down to,
Yes,
unfortunately.
yes, that's the way it goes. And I think you've got to be in it for a passion rather than the money. And I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of us do to start off with. We have to make these sacrifices, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely got to be something that you love doing to kind of really persevere with it.
Yes, 100%. It's definitely my love and my passion anyway. So I just keep going. And you have good days, you have bad days. But you know what? If it's something you love, you just keep pursuing your dream and never give up. That's my advice to people as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Thank you. What's your thoughts on equality, diversity, inclusion at the moment, especially around music and film? Do you think we're doing a good job on that, or do we need to do some more?
I think things are improving,
Yeah,
but again, it's one of those things that sometimes, from a film perspective anyway, sometimes studios are a little bit cynical. Like they think it's if we do something that's very diverse, it's a bit of a cash grab. So they approach it from the wrong mindset, really. Rather than trying to give opportunities, they're trying to exploit something they think might be marketable.
yeah.
Um, Rather than doing it from the right frame of mind, really, with the
Oh,
right intentions.
yeah.
Um, it might be similar in music. I'm not too sure on that, but yeah, there are certainly more opportunities opening, and
Fingers.
there's more avenues. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what we were hoping for. So, what would you like to see improve in the next couple of years then? If we're looking at this kind of topic in this area around music and film, what do you think is the best options to move forwards?
I think it's finding a way that more money can get filtered around to the right places, and encourage people that are on uh, the ground floor, that there's ways to move up, and there's ways to make money doing it. Because ultimately, if you're starving your indie filmmakers or your indie musicians, um, and pushing them out from being able to make a way to do it and do what they love and make some money from it,
Yes.
then there's going to be less content coming through.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's very difficult. So there needs to be, I guess it's always been that way, but there needs to be less corporate greed, I suppose,
Yeah. I think so. And
right at the top.
it's also a balance of making sure that you're getting high enough quality content, but also at a decent price, which can also be
Yeah,
another challenge, can't it?
it can. Yeah, I mean, because like there's so much content around. It's in some ways it's quite easy to do things. AI can help musicians kind of put a track together.
Yeah.
Same with writing. You can churn out a script with AI and just go in and refine it a bit. And I
Yeah.
think there's a danger that people become a little bit lazy doing that, but also that the people at the very top start getting ideas that that's where I can save even more money.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Starve creativity even more than it already is being starved, unfortunately. But yeah, that's the
Yeah.
problem with AI, unfortunately. And do you find like with your filmmaking and doing your music, do you do all of that yourself, or do you place some of that on sync placements? Do you get the other artists on that? Or do you find it cheaper to just keep the cost down and do it all yourself?
In terms of like the last film I did, so I was going to outsource and hire a composer to do it.
Yeah,
Then because it was it's kind of like a low budget film and I was self-funding as well.
right.
Um, we ended up having to do a few reshoots and extra days. So it then became a case of uh, I was looking at the budget, and then also I had very distinct ideas in my head. I was starting to kind of almost like dream up the music on a
Okay,
nightly basis.
that's cool.
So yeah, I then thought like, because I've got such specific ideas and I've got certain themes in my head, it's
Yes.
probably going to be easier for me to do that. So I invested in a little bit of equipment, nothing kind of too fancy, and just set about doing it myself,
That's great. Well,
which I
that,
found really enjoyable. I just
yeah.
booked a week away somewhere. Thankfully, my wife let me do that.
Oh, that's nice.
And just spent a week doing the score.
Yeah. It's just somewhere nice and quiet where you can actually concentrate and relax and just get all your creativity out.
Yeah, that was it, really. Yeah.
Okay, I get that. I get that. And do you think cultural and age differences have an impact on the amount of equality, diversity, inclusion we can achieve as well at the moment? Because certain people might not be as open to it. We've got different cultures, different religions. Do you think that also has an impact on what we can achieve right now?
It can do, really. I mean, that just generally on the whole, the country is quite divisive at the moment, and there's age divides, there's cultural divides. It just feels like rather than anyone trying to understand each other too well, they just
Yeah,
keep they put barriers up and just create divides. So it's quite difficult at the moment. And certainly when it comes to places like Amazon, Spotify, or whoever it might be, either the I'm guessing they're mostly run by people of a generation maybe older than me.
yeah.
So yeah, it's tough.
It is tough, yeah, but I think the more we discuss it, the more we educate people, raise awareness, and empower others, hopefully more people will come through the talent pipeline. So that's the idea that I'm going along with anyway and hoping for. I know it's going to take time, but the more we kind of discuss these things and speak about them, I think the more awareness it brings as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it would be nice if certain things like YouTube and Spotify are probably similar. I know there's film distribution channels like Tubi and things like that.
Yeah,
That there'll come a point where people are starting to make a bit of money on it. They're finding a way to do that, and then they switch the goalposts
yeah,
and they
yeah,
change the way the algorithm works. They change the payouts that they give, and they just make it more and more difficult. And it's across a lot of different creative arts as well that
yeah.
find that similar issue. So you know people should be encouraged to be making money, and it should it shouldn't be such a challenge.
Right, exactly,
um yeah, but sometimes they just think, well, we're spending too much money here on people, let's
exactly.
just switch, change the rules and make it more difficult.
Which is a challenge, isn't it? Especially with
Yeah.
people like us that are trying to build our brand and build the name up and get out there more. Like, do you find you do a lot of promotions for your films and for your documentaries? Is that something that you kind of do a lot of, or do you have to take that in-house to somebody else? Outhouse, sorry, not in-house.
Yeah. So you try and do as much as you possibly can by yourself.
Yeah.
um I'm quite lucky in terms of the last film I produced, because I co-produced it with someone that runs a film website
Okay.
that I've been writing for him for about 15 years.
Right.
Um, they've got quite a big viewer base and uh, quite a lot of visitors every
Brilliant.
month. Um, but even for him, he found that about a year or so ago, it was doing really well.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Google
The algorithm.
changed something up, and then they just saw a drop, and
Right.
he's trying to sort of build that up again. But
Mm.
again, it's quite tough. But you know, you've got to learn, I think, also to market yourself as much as you can,
Yes.
even if it's, as many ways as you can without spending too much money. And then
Good.
you can maybe put a bit into targeted ads and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. And it's very fast paced and competitive. Have you found being in this kind of industry has affected your mental health and the way you feel about yourself and obviously financing? How do you deal with that? And has it ever affected you personally?
It has it definitely can be a bit soul destroying at times when you feel like you should be making a step up,
Yeah.
and then there's all these barriers, all these problems, like particularly since I started producing as well.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to have more control over the end product and how it turned out, and kind of do more things that I wanted to do rather than someone hiring me to write a script. It might not necessarily be 100% the kind of thing that I
Get you.
want to do. So yeah, but the responsibility just brings more stress ultimately.
Yeah.
So it's tough. So sometimes I find myself having to just sort of take a step away for a few days and just try and put my mind somewhere else.
Yeah. Get you. Get you. That's really good advice. And not take it personally either, because I think,
Yeah.
sometimes we can take it really to heart because it's something we love so much. But I tend not to do that. I just take myself back a little bit and say, right, I need a little break, which really helps. And I do meditation and, affirmations and things like that to help me with my mental health because sometimes it can be really, really challenging at times. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, any way you can find to kind of bring yourself away from it and just de-stress a bit,
Yeah.
it's ideal really.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to give some advice to someone that's trying to get into the industry right now, what kind of advice would you give to them on how to get into this kind of roles that you're doing right now?
I think when you're first starting out, networking is quite important.
Yeah,
In terms of getting into film or being a writer, the one thing that really kicked me off was doing starting in short films as kind of like a way to show yourself off, and basically producing that myself to get a first few credits on IMDb and things like that,
yeah,
which is like the Internet Movie Database.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, starting off yourself and then taking the opportunities to network and gain connections, like-minded people. So from my point of view as a screenwriter, I'd be networking with maybe a director,
yeah,
maybe a camera person, people that wanted the same thing and to kind of get on that ladder.
yeah,
Um, and then, generally one thing leads to another. And a lot of the repeat work I've got is, via connections.
yeah.
So getting work again with people, and then they recommend me to someone else, and it
Brilliant.
kind of goes from there.
Yeah. And do you find a lot of the networking still based in London, or do you find that scattered around the country? Is that easy to get to from where you are?
Uh, to be honest, a lot of it you can do online, even just as simple as, online.
Yeah,
Because you'll have a lot of mutuals. I mean, the film industry, for example, in the UK, almost everyone knows everyone
yeah,
in a way.
yeah,
Even if it's one or two connections away, you'll kind of know, well, I know this person because they know X or whoever it might be. Music, I guess, could be similar.
it is.
That's more of a direct thing. So if you're if you're a performance-based musician, for example, and rather than more of a producer, for example, then getting out there to gigs and things is probably a good thing to do,
Yeah,
and networking that way.
yeah.
But yeah, networking in person, networking online, I think that's it's important to do. Then you kind of get your name whispered in circles, I suppose.
I think that's really good
And as
advice.
long as you're well behaved and you have a good reputation, it's good.
Yes, definitely agree with you on that one. It's really helped me along the way and it helps build meaningful relationships rather than just sending your music out to people that you don't actually know. And then you're not going to get a
Yeah.
response. So it's always good to build those relationships first, I think, 100%. Definitely. Yeah. So what would you like to share with us? Any major wins or successes at the moment that you'd like to share with us? You shared some already. So yeah, is there anything else you would like to share with us that you've been doing?
Uh, yeah, just in terms of films. So yeah, this year I had one that went out in American cinemas, which
Congratulations.
was really pleasing for me.
Yeah,
And then yeah, I've got the first film that I co-produced is coming out in February in the US and UK. That's
awesome.
been really pleasing just to kind of get to the end of a very long process because when you're controlling it yourself and you're kind of one of the people in charge, it's a much longer process,
Yeah.
which started a couple of years back now.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because sometimes I've written for hire and I've handed something off after a couple of weeks and then that's it, I'm done with it.
Right.
So yeah, being in control just it's a much longer process. So when you finally do get that release date,
Wow.
it feels a lot more rewarding.
Can imagine. Really exciting times. Well, good luck with that. I hope it goes really well because you deserve it. And I'm sure it's going to be excellent. And we'll leave a link with all of the descriptions for your films as well in the description box below, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Perfect. And it's,
And I
if
hope everything goes well for you as well.
well, thank you, Tom. Thanks. If there's any ways that people can connect with you as well, have you got any LinkedIn or profiles that you want to share with us before you go, where people could connect with you?
Probably the best place is Instagram,
Yeah.
which is at Jolliffe Productions.
Okay, I'll put that in the description as well below, and then our listeners can check that out. So thank you ever so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this morning, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your week.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.